'Twas the night before Christmas. Let's all get together to hear a reselling tale from Cosmic Deal Heather.
Yes, gather round, for I'm going to tell you the tale of the time I scammed a scammer on eBay, and then somebody turned around and used the exact same detective work against me. Now, I have told a condensed version of this story on both my Instagram and TikTok, but I got a lot of questions about how I actually did the detective work, so I figured I would make a video breaking it down. And also, it's just an interesting story to tell. And I'm definitely not making this video because it's Christmas and I don't feel like doing a voiceover video. Definitely not. Let's roll a quick intro and get on with the story time. So part one of this story will title Scamming the Scammer. This all started back in October when I sold an OmniVision VCR. I love selling OmniVision VCRs, they're like one of my favorite electronics. But for some reason, VCRs always attract dropshippers, and this one was no different because when I sold it, it included a note to not include an invoice because it's a gift. Spoiler alert, it's almost never a gift. And I know that because it's a used VCR. Like, there's only so many places you're gonna be able to go and get a 25-year-old VCR. No surprise, it's gonna come from eBay. So whoever receives that gift probably wouldn't care, which tells me that this is a dropshipper. I should probably explain what dropshipping is for people who aren't familiar. Dropshipping is when someone lists an item on Amazon usually, or maybe on their own website for a really high price. And then when it sells, they go source that product cheaper elsewhere, in this case, eBay. So I know what you're thinking, why would someone buy it for twice as much on Amazon when they could just go to eBay and find it for less? I don't know. People don't shop around, people prefer to shop on Amazon, so they end up paying more when they could have gotten it for less. And then the dropshipper is the middleman and they just pocket the difference. That's how they make money. And why didn't I list my VCR on Amazon? I just choose not to put used electronics on Amazon. That's my own personal way of doing things. I could have listed it on Amazon and sold it there myself for more money, but I chose not to. Amazon customers, in my experience, are more likely to fuss over things and do little swaps where they will buy a working product and return a broken one. I know people do that on eBay too, but it seems like it's way more common to scam on Amazon. And I don't really have a problem with dropshipping. I don't care if somebody's gonna make a little money off of me. And normally I don't have a problem with them opening returns or anything, it's all just fine. Almost a month goes by and in November I get a message that the person who bought my VCR wants to return it. Meaning my dropshipper is telling me they would like to return it, but it's really their Amazon customer telling them they'd like to return it and they're then leapfrogging it to me. They claimed that the player didn't work and there was a tape stuck in it, and then they showed me a picture of a tape that was just sort of spread open and it didn't really show that there was anything wrong. And that was strange to me for two reasons. One is I fully tested that VCR, so I know it worked. And number two is I only used 2 tapes for testing. One is Blast from the Past with Brendan Fraser, the other is The Iron Giant. And I still had both of those tapes in my possession, so what tape could they possibly be talking about? This was more evidence for me that whoever received it on the Amazon side either broke it or is trying to do a switcheroo. I had a hunch that my dropshipper didn't even have the VCR back in their possession, that their Amazon customer still had it, and that the picture was actually from their Amazon customer to them. So they wouldn't actually know what the tape was unless they relayed that question to their Amazon customer. And that usually takes some time, so if they couldn't immediately answer me what was on the tape, it's more evidence that they don't have the VCR in their possession. Then he confirms that he does not know and that he will check later, which is the exact response I would expect from somebody who doesn't have the tape in their possession and didn't take that picture. So then I decided to do a little detective work to see if I could find this seller on Amazon, which sounds like a really hard task, but I'm gonna break it down and show you how it wasn't that bad.
On eBay, when somebody buys an item, the name registered to that eBay account will appear next to the buyer's username. This name did not match the name on the shipping address, which is more dropshipping evidence. Then all I had to do was Google that name to turn up a general area that this person may live in. It sounds scary, but unfortunately it's just public information. Armed with the name provided to me by eBay and the general area they may live in, I went to Amazon to see if I can find an account matching that information. First I looked for a listing for my particular OmniVision, figuring if they sold it once, they'll probably sell it again. But there was nobody selling that particular VCR. So I assumed perhaps they'd be selling other OmniVisions. And I was able to find somebody matching that description on a different OmniVision listing. But here's where you look on Amazon to find that information. If you click on any seller on any Amazon listing, you can find the detailed seller information on their profile. I don't agree with Amazon doing this. I don't think it really helps the buyers the way they think it does, but it is what it is. So I was able to confirm that my eBay buyer also sells on Amazon.
All of this is just circumstantial evidence. It's just a smoking gun. I don't have any physical proof that this person dropshipped this VCR. I only have proof that they sell VCRs on Amazon. I didn't really care about receiving the VCR back. I didn't really care about having to refund this person. I didn't really care about getting a negative feedback. I decided I was just gonna go full stop and see what would happen if I accused him. I cut the Customer Service Act and I'm like, look, we both know that you dropshipped this on Amazon. We both know that that voids your buyer protections. So maybe you should just cut it out and accept that you're gonna hold the bag this time. Side note, it's not against the buyer protections for him to do that. I was laboring under the false assumption that dropshipping voided your buyer protections on eBay. It might have been the case in the past, but I checked with eBay for Business and they confirmed that it's not against any rules. If they dropship it, they're still allowed to return it. But if I didn't know that for sure, maybe my buyer wouldn't know that either. And that the whole "I'm gonna report you to eBay for dropshipping" might scare them enough to drop it. He replies back that it's a very odd way to speak to a customer because they could get the picture later. After they ask their Amazon customer for the picture and the customer sends it to them. I divulged that I know his Amazon store name and that I have a screenshot of him selling this model on Amazon. Again, that wouldn't prove anything. That's meaningless. And number two, I don't actually have that screenshot. I don't have any of this information I claim to have. So not only do I not have any proof, it's also not against the rules. So none of what I'm saying matters. He can still return the VCR. And what happens here? He buys my bluff and he closes the return. I was legitimately shocked. I yelped out loud when I saw that. And I don't advocate doing this. Please do not bluff your customers. I only did it because I legitimately didn't know it wasn't against the rules. I swear it used to be and it might have changed. So I guess it was only a half bluff because I bluffed all the evidence part and the reporting part, but I didn't bluff that I thought it was against the rules. So I was like, okay, cool, I don't have to accept the return for a $70 VCR. I guess that's a win. It's kind of a weird win, but I'll take it. And I thought that was the last I was ever gonna see or hear from him. And then he reaches out again and I was like, are you kidding me? For no reason at all, this man continues to talk to me. And he sends me a picture of the tape that was in the VCR, even though it's meaningless at this point. I confirm that that was not one of my tapes and that his Amazon customer is likely trying to pull one over on him. And then he confirms that that was probably the case, which is his way of admitting, yeah, I was drop shipping. And then he basically fedora tips me like, you bested me, milady. He says, I shouldn't have tried to call your bluff, by the way. I admire your hustle. We're in a similar boat and I should have done things differently. Just wanted to say that. Hope you have continued success. Are you kidding me right now? Why are you saying this? I could imagine this man being bluffed so hard he's just sitting back in his chair I can't believe that just happened. Wow. If somebody did that to me, I would be like, I never want to speak to this person again. How dare they figure out what I'm doing? But I think he was maybe just scared that I was going to ruin his business, even though literally nothing he was doing was against the rules, and he should probably know that. I'm not sure what the moral of that story is. I guess know the rules if you're gonna dropship so that if somebody tries to feed you a bunch of BS, you'll be able to recognize it. And like I said, please don't. I don't advocate doing this. So anyway, on to story 2, which is how all of that Amazon investigation ended up coming back to bite me. Maybe you could call that karma for what I did in story 1. I'm willing to accept that. This story begins with me shopping at a 75% off sale at a local liquidator. This particular liquidator has a lot of products that I end up replenishing, I'll buy out what they have and then I'll come back later and they'll have even more. This trip is no different and they have some more of an item that I've been selling really well and I have a bunch of them in my cart. Occasionally when I find a good bolo like that, I'll go on the listing and I'll see where the other sellers on it are located. This helps me to determine if all the people selling it are also sourcing it at this liquidator or if it's more of a nationwide thing. In the case of this particular item, I knew that the only people selling it, the majority of the people selling it were local, which tells me they're also picking it up at this liquidator. And that's fine, I don't mind competition, there's more than enough for all of us. I have this item in my cart and I'm just pushing it along and another person is just sort of staring at the stuff in my cart. And she decides to ask me, hey, are you a reseller by any chance? When somebody asks me directly if I'm a reseller, I normally say no because I just don't want that kind of confrontation. But in this case, I was concerned that maybe she was a follower or she knew me from social media or something, and I didn't want to lie and be like, no, I'm not who you think I am. So I just proudly said like, yeah, I'm a reseller. She continued with another question and asked, do you sell on Amazon? And I said, yeah, I sell on Amazon and eBay. Then she gets this look on her face like she's being kind of sly and she says, what's your store name? Now, if you've been following me long enough, you know I don't directly share that information. Of course, it's out there, it's easy enough to find, but I would rather people jump through one hoop than to just give it to them on a silver platter. So I'm not like mean or anything, I'm just like, yeah, I'm sorry, I don't really share that information. She seems kind of taken back by that answer and she's like, oh, sorry, I didn't mean anything. And I'm like, it's fine, don't worry about it, we're cool. She goes one way down the aisle and I continue looking at the stuff on the shelf. Maybe 10 minutes later, I'm done looking in that aisle and I've made my way towards the end where she is. And she turns to me again and says, you're a long way from home. And then I was taken back by that. I'm like, number one, what does she mean? I'm only about 25 minutes from that house. Does she consider that a long way? Because I don't personally consider that a long way. So I was just kind of dumbfounded and I didn't know how to respond. I'm like, I guess? She's like, about 35 minutes? Notice how she says 35 minutes and I said 25 minutes. So I was like, maybe she's just bad at math. Maybe she doesn't know the town I'm from. It's a small town. She might not actually know where it's at. I really didn't know how to respond to that because number one, she's wrong. And number two, I don't consider even 35 minutes a long way from home. I was like, uh-huh. In that moment, it clicks in my head what she's trying to do. She's insinuating that she looked at the product in my cart, went to the listing where at the time there was probably 3 local people on it, and decided that I was probably one of those 3.
So I forgot to clarify here that when I got home and looked at the items in her cart to sort of cross-reference who she was one of the people on that item's listing. So that's how she knew that I was also probably a reseller, and maybe she was upset that they were all in my cart and not hers.
I just think it's really weird to be like, haha, I got you, even though you didn't tell me your store name, I now know what it is. That felt like a really big invasion of privacy. But 2 can play at that game. I looked at the items in her cart and saw an item that I had been selling as well. So I slid that energy back to her and said, oh, you must be the other seller on my item listing. And she was like, yep. Like she didn't even try and deny it, didn't seem surprised. It was like 2 dogs sniffing each other's butts. Like at that point we had identified who each other was and the tensions completely dropped. We started talking about Amazon, sharing our woes and struggles as an Amazon seller, IP claims, that kind of stuff. She also asked me a bunch of questions which in my mind implied that she thought she was talking to a more established, bigger, smarter Amazon seller, which I guess was fine. And maybe that was the entire reason she was desperate to talk to me, like she just wanted a friend and wanted some advice, and I can't really knock her for that. But she asked me about pallet shipping to Amazon. She was asking me about hot and cold packs, and I was like, I'm sorry, I don't really deal with that kind of stuff, so I don't know, I can't help you. So we wished each other well and parted ways. What could have been like a really scary situation with somebody basically saying like, haha, I know who you are, turned out to be like completely fine. But it just goes to show you that it's not hard to make that leap from I know what you're selling to I know who you are and where you live due to how Amazon's seller stuff is set up. And I'm not gonna lie, that's a little scary to me. There are ways to obscure that information. A lot of people form businesses so that they don't have to list their first and last name, they can use their business name. But it's my understanding that you can't do that for a single member LLC, you still have to use your legal name. And unless you're using a registered agent for that business, it's not that hard to just Google that LLC and then see who registered the business. Like it's just one extra step to figure it out. And you can also use a business address or a post office box to obscure your address instead, which if you're not already doing, I highly recommend it. Overall, if she wanted to talk to me or make an Amazon seller friend, I think there were far better ways to go about it than basically saying, I know who you are, teehee. I would never dream of doing that to somebody. I'm kind of a head down, I'm gonna mind my own business and do my own thing. You can do your thing on Amazon. I'm not gonna like look at your store and try and figure out who you are because that's none of my business. Except in the case of the first story where I thought that person was doing something wrong and wanted to hold them accountable. In this story, I hadn't done anything wrong and was just minding my own business. Here's the funny thing though. When I went home, I looked on that listing and I found myself, her, and a couple other people. When I mapped one of those person's towns from their town to the liquidator, guess how many minutes it was? 35. So she actually doesn't realize that I'm not the person that she thinks I am. She thinks I'm this other seller who is 35 minutes away. So maybe this person has no idea who I am after all. So is that like karmaing again backwards? I really don't know. What was the point of this story? I guess it was just a cautionary tale that if people know what you're selling, people can figure out who you are. And that's a big reason why I don't usually post my Amazon stuff until after it has sold. I've been told that doesn't really help at all, but again, if it's just one extra hoop, that's fine with me. And the story just fits so well and happens so closely to the first story that I felt both of them together would make a good story time. That was a nice break from all the voiceover videos, although my next one is gonna be a big bolo fest. I find a bunch of cool items I can't wait to show you. If you're not already subscribed, please consider doing so because I have no set upload schedule. I try and get one video out a month, and if you want to see it pop up in your feed, subscribing is the best way to do that. If you're still here after all that ranting, please leave me a thumbs up so I know. Now get out there, have fun, find something good, know your rights on eBay, and avoid people who want to ask what your Amazon store is.